Hello everyone, it's your friendly neighborhood VTuber Suvi here again with a new tutorial. So today we will get to the very basics of animation chaining using Animator controllers in VSeeFace. And this is all possible because the VSeeFace SDK got a new version just a while ago, which adds support for some components that we will be needing today. So before we get started with today, make sure you download the latest VSeeFace SDK, as well as getting Unity 2019.4.29. All the links are in the description for this. Also, if you have never done any VSeeFace tutorials, I recommend you check the previous ones first, because today will be kind of difficult, and I highly recommend you do every single step in the tutorials to learn what we are doing today. So what is an animation chain? Animation chain will allow us to play different animation after one animation ends. This makes it so that we can, for example, have a sit animation where our character sits down, and then when we stand up, we actually play a different animation for the standing up animation. And that's what we will be doing today during the tutorial. So, if you guys are ready, let's get started. Okay. Now that you have imported the VSF SDK as well as UniVRM 0.66 and your VRM model into your Unity project, the first thing we should do is create a new Animator controller. And now, when we are talking about Animator controllers, you will see that your model does have an Animator controller slot in the actual parent node. But since we are going to create an Animator controller that actually remains in the model, we will not be able to use the slot here. But we will need to create it to another level. So first of all, let's right click somewhere in our project and then create, and then go to Animator controller. And now let's name this Chain Animator. So this will be our new Animator controller that we will be using today. So how do we assign this? First of all, we will be setting it to the level of the root. Now, this will allow us to animate the skeleton. Now, if you do want to animate something on the higher level, then you will need to still come up with another solution. Okay, so how do we animate this? First of all, we need to add a new component here. So click Add Component and then search for Animator. And then we will add the Animator here. And to this slot we will drag our new Chain Animator, like so. Okay, so once we are done with this, let's select our root where we have the Animator available, and then go to the Animator window. If you don't have this, you can get it visible from the window, and then Animation, and then get the Animator. You should also get the Animation tab visible at the same time. Okay, let's click the Animator. And now in the Animator, you will see the animation builder, basically, where we will be able to build different kinds of animations for our avatar. So we could start simply by creating an idle animation, where our character is doing something, maybe sitting down or something like that. And this animation will be applied always to our avatar. So as a test, let's try creating something like that. So right click here to create a state, and then create an empty state. Now this will be our default state. So if we want to create an idle animation, we can assign it here. So let's start with something like that. So now let's go to the Animation tab. And when we have the root active, we will be creating the animations for this specific animator. So click on the Create, and now we will need to create a new animation. So let's go and create a folder called Animations, or put it anywhere you want, and let's simply name it something like New Idol, and then save it. And now let's make the scene view visible. Now what we can do is we can start animating our avatar to create some kind of idle animation that will keep repeating over and over again. and we don't even need to turn it on with a blend shape. So to do this, let's click on the record, and then we can start to move our character's bones. Now keep in mind, you should only animate those bones that will be moved around, because if you touch the other bones, then that animation value will be applied to the tracking you have active at the time. So some animations will look really weird when added with, for example, web camera tracking or VR tracking or whatever tracking you happen to be using on the background. So let's make a simple sitting animation for our avatar. And we will do this simply by setting all the bones in a sitting pose. So find your avatar's legs and just start rotating them so that it will be in a sitting pose. Make sure you have the record button on though before you start doing this. And once you're done, then click the record button again to deactivate it. Now we have a very simple sitting animation, or more like it's a sitting state. So we will be in this specific animation at all times. And this is good for an idle animation that will be always on. So let's say if your character will always be sitting, you could use this to simply do that sit animation. So now how do we set this to our animator? Let's go to the animator. You will now see that there is a new idle box here already. But since we are creating a default idle state, we don't need to use this one. So click on the new state here, and we will then assign the idle animation here. So click on the small round button, and then from the box find the new idle that we just created and add it like this. And now we can remove this new idle box. So select it and click delete, like so. Now if we do export our model at this time, we will see that the model should be sitting. So let's give that a try. Go back to the scene, select your avatar, then go to VSF SDK and then export avatar bundle. And let's see how this will work in VSeeFace. Okay, and now that we are in VSeeFace, you will see that our character is automatically in the sitting pose and is still reacting to the web camera. And as you can see, our avatar's arms are down rather than in the T-pose, which is also like caused by the tracker. So if we had animated our arms, they might be somewhere else than where they are right about now. Okay, so now you might be asking, how do you change this dynamically? Like how do you use blend shapes then to swap around the animations? And what are animation chains? Now I think this is something we will get into next. So let's close VSeeFace and get back to Unity. Okay, so now that we are back in Unity, the next step is to experiment around with the animation chains. Now for this step, we will still be creating the animations manually to keep it simple. So how do we do it so that we can actually toggle these animations on and off and play possibly different animations when we do that? Let's go back to the animator and we will delete the state that we create. So select it and click delete. Okay, so the first thing we will now need to do is right click, create a state, and let's name this state to be idle. So select it and rename it as idle, like so. So now this will be our default state where we will be whenever this animator is playing. And next step, let's create yet another state here, and let's call this sitting, like so. So this animation will now be a sit animation where our character will be sitting down. Now, since we are creating also animation chains, we could also create a third one here and call that standing up. Like so. And now how do we connect all of these? First of all, let's go to the parameters tab here. And we are going to create a new parameter. And now this is something that only became possible with the latest VSeeFace SDK. So click on the parameter and add a bool. And we are going to call it sit. Like so. So now if this sitting will be set on, we want our animation to move to the sitting, and when it gets disabled, we want it to play the standing up animation and then go back to the idle state. So go back to the layers. Now let's right click on the idle and click the make transition. And now point to the sitting like so. And now click on this arrow, and what we want to do next is click on the 𝐒𝐻𝐋𝐿 off. We don't need that right now. And then in the conditions, click plus. And then it should select your sit parameter already by default, and the value needs to be set to true. So whenever the sit is set to true, we will go to the sitting animation. And now what we want to do is move from sitting to standing up as well. So right click on sitting, make transition to the standing up, and now click on this arrow, and in here you can also again set the 𝐻𝐻𝐋𝐿 off, and to the conditions click plus, and again select the sit, and then set the value to false. And now we can finally make a transition from standing up to the idle like so. And now we can test this out. You can click on the play, and when it enters the play mode, you should go back to the animator, and you will see that right now it's playing the idle state. Now click the parameters. If you click on the sit, you see that it moves to the sitting, and now when we click the sitting off, it will play the standing up, and then it will resume to idle. So now the only thing missing is actually creating animations for all of these boxes. We don't necessarily need an idle animation for this one, so let's skip that for now. Instead, let's create the sitting animation. Earlier on we did create a simple sit state, but let's make one that actually makes us go into the sitting pose from the standing pose. So again, go to the scene, select the root, and then select the animation and click on create. And then let's create an animation called sit down. And now we need to click the record button again. And since we are making a sitting animation that goes from standing to sitting, we should also save the start values for our bones. So let's set them so that we will actually save these start values. So just quickly rotate the parts that you want to save the start values for. So for this leg, make sure that the rotations are set to 0, and so that it actually appears here like this. And do the same for both of the legs. Like so. And then also to the lower legs. If you somehow manage to click yourself off the animator, simply go back to the animation mode and continue. Like so. Okay, so now we have default state set for both of the upper leg and the lower leg. Now we could possibly also need this for other bones, but you can do it as you please. Just make sure that every bone that you will be moving in the sitting animation will have a starting pose. Okay, so the next step is we will move to, let's say, the frame 60. Like so. So this animation will be like 1 second by default. And now we will create a sitting animation. So simply move the bones where they should be. Like so. And now you can preview it by moving this around. As you see, it's not exactly the best kind of sitting animation, but this will do for the tutorial. You can do something more complicated for your own model. Okay, so now we have the sit down animation. So let's remove the record mode again. So click here. Okay, so one animation done. Now, how do we then get ourselves to stand up with a different animation. What we should first do is make sure that we are able to take the sitting start pose. So click on here on the last frame and then copy these frames by Ctrl+C. Just to keep this in safety. And next thing, let's click here on the animation name and then create new clip. And then let's call it stand up. And now we are going to click on the record again, and this time we will first pass the animation, so Ctrl+V, like so. So now we have a starting pose for us. And again, let's move to the frame number 60. And now let's do something else. We will want the animation to play something a bit different when we do this. So what we could do is maybe add some additional movement to some other bones that we have not been using. So maybe let's move around our hands a little bit during the animation. So let's make it so that in the middle of our animation, our avatar will try to raise the hands. Of course, this will be applied or used with additive blending to our already done hand movement from the tracker. Okay, and now let's set the legs to be at their default positions as well. So simply set them to 0. Like so. So now the animation would be like this. Okay, let's leave the record mode. And now we go to assign these. So go to the Animator, click on the sitting here, and then select again the sitting animation, like so. Then go to the standing up, and then select the stand up animation. Now you can also remove these extra states that were created here, like so. Of course, right now there is no way for us to toggle the sitting animation on. So what we need to do is we need to create a normal animation and also one of the new components that will allow us to set these animations. So to be able to toggle these effects on and off, we will need to create some new components from the VSF SDK. So select your avatar root, right click and create empty. And let's rename this to be toggles, like so. And in here we will create a new empty again, and we will call it toggle sit, like so. Okay, and now this should be a node that will toggle our sit animation on. Now we will also want to create one that will toggle it off. So let's create yet another empty to the toggles level, and let's call it toggle sit off. Okay, so now we have two toggles here. And what we need to do is now create a new component to them. So select the toggle sit first and then click on add component. And now search for VSF. And you will want to find the VSF set animator bool component, because the parameter in our animator was a boolean value. So select that one. And now we can select a target animator. Now this target animator will be the animator we place to the root node. So simply drag the root node to the target animator slot, like so. And to parameter name, let's type sit, like so. And now we want this specific game object to turn on the sit animation. So click on the parameter value to check it on, like so. Okay, and now since we don't want the sit animation to be on by default, we will need to set this active state of this game object to off. So click here to make it so that it is not on by default. Now let's go to the toggle sit off. Now this is the default state we want our avatar to be, where the sitting animation is off. So add a new component, add the set animator bool again, and then drag in the root animator to the target animator like so, and again name it to sit. But this time we set the parameter off like so. Okay, so the next thing we want to do is actually animate this. And to pull this off, we will need to create a temporary animator. This is what we have done in the past as well. So create animator controller and let's call it temporary. Like so. Next step, let's enter the play mode. And we will drag in the temporary animator to our avatar. Like so. And our avatar moves into the default animation pose like so. Okay, so now we need to create an animation that turns those toggles around. So go to the animation tab and then select your avatar. Now let's click the create button. And let's call this toggle sit. Like so, and save. And now we need to first create the default states for this. So click on the record button, go to the toggle sit, click on the active state on and off, like so, and then go to the toggle sit off and repeat the same step, like so. And let's go to the next one, where we then set this off. So for the toggle sit off, turn it off. For the toggle sit on, turn it on, like so. Now you will see that it is starting to repeat this because our animation is actually set on loop. But we will fix this later. Now let's leave the record mode and then let's leave play mode as well. And now the next step for us is to find the animation that we just created. So the toggle sit and then click the loop time off. This will make it so that our animation will not loop. Next thing, select your model. And now we will need to add the VSF animations component. So if your avatar doesn't have it yet, click the add component and then search for the VSF animations, like so. And then click on the plus icon. And here we will need to assign a blend shape to this animation. So we will need to create a new blend shape clip before we can proceed. So find your avatar's blend shape index. It is in the blend shape folder usually. Click on the blend shape index and then create blend shape clip. And then let's create a blend shape clip called sit and save. And now let's go back to the VSF animations component. So click on your avatar and then from the blend shape list select the sit. And from the animation list, select the toggle sit. And now what we are going to do next is we will export this model and see how it will work in VSeeFace. So again, select your avatar, go to VSF SDK and export avatar bundle. Okay, so now that you're in VSeeFace and you have set the expression, basically the sit, to some hotkey value, you can try clicking it. And well, you will see that it keeps repeating. This is because we did not set the sit and stand up animations to be also non-loopable. But as you can see, it plays different animation when we sit down and when we stand up. So let's next fix these couple of issues we have here. So go back to Unity. And then what we are going to do next is find the animations we created. So find the sit down. Take the loop time off, do the same for the stand up, like so. Okay, and once you're done with those, the next thing is to export it again. So again, export the model as an avatar bundle, and then now it should work in VSeeFace. So now in VSeeFace, when you click the sitting, your avatar will sit, and when you stand up, it will play the other animation like so. And as you can see, it doesn't even look too bad. In this mode, it does add the additive hand animation there, of course, so do keep that in mind. I hope you liked the tutorial, even though it may have been a bit difficult today. In the coming weeks, I will probably be covering outfit swapping and how to use some existing animations, like those that you can get from Mixamo or some other websites, and how to use them with this animation chaining system, because that's a bit more difficult thing. Anyway guys, if you like the content, consider subscribing down below as well as smashing the bell button, and also consider following me on those other social medias as well. I do have a Discord server, so if you run into any questions about this tutorial, I recommend you join that one and ask the questions there. I do also stream on Tuesdays, Thursdays and Saturdays on Twitch. If you would like to ask the questions live, that is totally fine as well. Anyway guys, see you next time. Bye bye!